So how do we get ready for heaven? How do you at 18 and 19 or younger or older get ready for heaven? Well, the first thing to do is kind of like we do now. The Bible is kind of like going online and checking out where you're going. You know, everybody, if they're going to New York City, like the evangelism, open-air evangelism right now, the BI in New York is there, all the parents checked out where their kids were going. Where are you staying? You know, they go online and they check the map and everything. Well, how about checking out where we're going, okay? First of all, it's our room at our Father's house. Jesus said in John 14:2, "In my Father's house are many mansions." Actually, those are the nests I told you about. If it weren't so, I would have told you. And I go to prepare yours just for you. Do you know what death is? Death is when your room is ready. Death is like you're waiting in the lobby and the clerk says, "Your room is ready now." Bonnie and I travel so much. We stay about 60 nights a year in every kind of hotel you can think of. And I can tell you, I won't even tell you the stories of the bugs and the one place we were, every time a toilet flushed on any of the 3 stories above us, it dripped in our room. That's a bad sign. Every time the showers ran in the rooms above us, it dripped out of the ceiling over there. Our room had 2 white 5-gallon buckets, one over there, that was the flush bucket, and that one was the shower bucket. So, I mean, we stayed in all kinds of places, and a lot of them, it's not ready for you. They're cleaning the buckets before you go in. And finally, they say from the desk, "Okay, your room is ready. You can go to it now." We're so excited. We want to go. Jesus said, "I prepare a place for you in my Father's house." It speaks of family, of love, of connection, of special reunions. But he doesn't stop with the the place in the Father's house. He says it's our seat at a banquet. This is Matthew 8:11. Jesus said, "I say to you, many will come from the east, the west, and sit down with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of God." Sit down. This is a banquet. You see, everybody in the ancient world worked all the time. There were actually 3 classes of people in the ancient world: the beggars, the poor, and the rich. If you read the New Testament, there are 3 groups. Jesus talks about the rich, the poor, and the beggars. Beggars don't have enough food for today, and they sit there with their hand out till you give them something, and they have nothing, and they got it, and when it's gone, that's all. They don't have anything again. The poor work all day long to get enough food for tomorrow. They left not hungry because they had food for that day. So poor people have enough for the day, but they have to work to have enough for tomorrow. Then you have rich. What are rich people in the Bible? People that have enough for several days. And of course, some people have enough for a long time. We are basically poor, but we're not beggars. And so we understand that we have to work to eat. To talk about a banquet, most people rarely went to a banquet. A banquet means someone else did all the work. They have all the food. I don't have to work. I can save my food at home. In fact, if you are going to a wedding banquet that lasted 7 days, you didn't have to work for 7 days. You would eat for 7 days. You had a place provided for you. Jesus said heaven is like a banquet, a feast. And not only do you show up, you have your own place just for you. That's why he says you have a name nobody else knows. All that we covered last week. Thirdly, Jesus says heaven is a longed-for paradise. Listen to what Paul said. Philippians 1:23. "I'm hard-pressed between these 2 options. I can't wait to depart and be with Christ, which is far better." You know what he's saying? I want to serve and minister in the church, but I long for heaven. Why does he long for heaven? Well, he talked about going there. Remember when he got stoned? When he was coming around between Lystra and Derbe and Iconium, and they started offering sacrifices to him, and he said, "I'm not a god," so they stoned him. You know, when you stone someone, you don't miss. Stoning is taking bowling ball-sized rocks and hitting people's heads. And Paul, in that process, they stoned him to death, and he's laying there crushed. And the disciples all came and stood around him, and he scared them. He stood up and came back to life. And you know what he says when he describes it in 2 Corinthians? He said, "I went to an unspeakable paradise," right here. He longed for that. He adds that when we're absent from our body here on earth, we're immediately present with the Lord there in 2 Corinthians 5, so he just longed to be there. Peter adds something. He said, we have reservations. You know, Bonnie and I, when we flew into Tampa and we got off the airplane, I got a text from the rental car company we work for, and they said, go to slot 12. And so I went across, into the parking structure at Tampa to slot 12, and there was my car. We had a reservation. They just did it. That's nice. You know what God said through Peter? To an inheritance incorruptible, undefiled, that does not fade away, reserved in heaven for you. Peter said, we who know Christ have reservations at the most exclusive resort in the universe. If you think the earth is pretty, can you imagine what the perfect form is? And we have reservations there. Jesus also says that heaven is secure. You know, we're starting to feel insecurity. I mean, everything going on right now that's going on around the world and weather-wise, this is going to be the largest hurricane season since 1850. Have you read all that? There are going to be 33, they predict, named storms. There are only 26 names for hurricanes. They picked 26. There are going to be 26 plus 7 more. Wow. It's very insecure, especially if you live in Florida. I'm teasing. Look what the writer of Hebrews says. For he waited for the city that has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Abraham waited for his secure home. He was living in a tent. How would you like to live in a tent out in the desert where people have bows and arrows and spears and there are herds of animals that could trample your tent? It's very insecure. You sleep on the ground with just nothing between you and danger? Any knife can go through a tent wall. Abraham said, no, I have a secure location. I'm waiting. I have a secure home God has built for me. Once Abraham came to know the Lord, he never built anything but an altar. He built altars all over the place. And he didn't own any land except for his wife's burial place. And he never built any house. He just lived in a tent. And he didn't spend his time building stuff on earth except for the Lord. Abraham is such a picture of walking by faith. Finally, this is what David said. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. You ever thought about David? David kind of was in a continuous battle for almost his whole 70 years. He starts out as a teenager fighting Goliath, and it said he was a little guy, and Goliath was the giant. You all know the story. As far as we know, David never lost a battle he was ever in. If you look in the scriptures, he doesn't lose anything, any battle he's in the scriptures. As far as we know, David was never wounded. How did they fight battles? They fought battles this far from their enemy. They hold a sword, or they slingshot someone that has to be within a few yards, and you could shoot them with an arrow. David was never wounded. David never lost a battle. But he was constantly hiding in caves and living outdoors and sleeping on the ground because he was always on the run. Saul tried to kill him, and the Philistines were after him, and you know what I mean? Look what kept him going. He says, the Lord is my shepherd, and I don't have to worry. And surely goodness and mercy follows me all the days of my life. That's a great summary of his very hard life. But what kept him going? The man after God's own heart. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Wow. Well, finally in Revelation, John sees what David talked about. Heaven is going home to stay in God's place. And